Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Moses. I'm the Executive Director with the Skaneateles Lake Association. Thank you for joining our second virtual annual meeting, August 24th, 2021. A few housekeeping announcements. If I'm coming through, I hope everyone can hear me at this point, but wanted just to note this evening, if we have questions, we are using the Q&A feature that's at the bottom of the screen on your control panel. And we look forward to a nice evening and learning quite a bit. Without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful and very much a mentor to myself, who's taken me under his wing since I started amongst our smart hearts of all our board that you'll get to meet quite a few of us this evening. But wanted to thank Dr. Paul Teresi, our SLA board president, for all his support of SLA and support of the opportunity to work as the executive director for the Skaneateles Lake Association. Paul, thanks for everything, and it's all you.
Thank you, Frank, and welcome everyone. And thanks for participating in our annual meeting. The second year in a row, we're doing it virtually. Just a few short months ago, we were actually considering an in-person or hybrid type meeting, and here we are again sitting in front of our computers on Zoom. Oh well. But without the support of annual SLA members like ourselves and generous legacy fund contributions, the environmental advocacy of the SLA would not exist. Can't thank Fran Fish enough for all of her dedicated long hours over the past dozen or so years in bringing our membership to its current level of excellence. Special thanks also to Rich Hole for his fine work as treasurer and chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. 2021 is the first year we have had an operating budget thanks to Rich and his committee. What a year it's been. One might even paraphrase Dickens. It's been the best of times, it's been the worst of times. Shortly following our last annual meeting, we lost our beloved Dr. Robert Werner, our resident limnologist, lake expert, referred to by some as Dean of the Lake. Bob was a retired professor from SUNY-ESF who worked tirelessly for the betterment of the lake and its watershed. If some of you haven't watched the very professionally done 9-minute video entitled The Lake Professor, produced by Bob's son-in-law, Andy Robinson, please check it out online over Vimeo. It's a wonderful award-winning informative piece on Bob's work and legacy. Who would have anticipated dealing with the current high lake level resulting from last week's unprecedented rainfall with all the nutrient pollution running into the lake? When just a few months back, we were so worried about the extreme low lake levels. Just 4 years following the last high level event in July of 2017, which led to the lake-wide halves, we'll all remember that. Now we're hanging on day by day, hoping Mother Nature is kind with cooler temperatures, cloudy and breezy conditions. Otherwise, we're in for a rough few months ahead and potential toxic algal blooms. Concurrently, we've been very concerned about the potential for additional nutrient pollution runoff from shoreline erosion from boat wakes, further promoting HABs. SLA did consult with the DEC and work closely with the local municipal watershed partnership, city and county governments, resulting in today's press release, which Frank is showing there on the screen, from Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon, declaring Skaneateles Lake a no-wake zone, 5-mile-an-hour speed limit in effect. This declaration involves Cayuga and Cortland counties, as well as Onondaga. It takes effect immediately and calls for a $250 fine for any violation of the speed restriction anywhere on the lake, not just confined to within 500 feet from shore, and will be enforced through the respective county sheriffs until it's rescinded once lake levels have returned to normal seasonal levels. Thank you very much, County Executive McMahon. Few can question at this juncture the urgent need to re-engineer the watershed to accommodate for these vagaries of a changing climate. One of the most important benefits of maintaining a robust legacy fund has been the ability to support a full-time executive director. Frank Moses, now into his third year at the helm of the SLA, has been critical in moving the SLA agenda forward, working closely with our formidable and dedicated group of volunteers. Sometimes by even helping to promote projects to be done by other fellow stakeholders. I'd like to describe two brief examples of this. The first, by promoting and helping to finance the writing of a $50,000 grant to control hemlock woolly adelgid from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiation Fund, which was awarded to Onondaga County Soil and Water to treat the hemlocks at the southern basin of the Skaneateles Lake watershed. This initiative was instigated by SLA members residing there who were reporting the increasing destruction of all too critical hemlock trees by this invasive pathogen, the woolly adelgid. Bob Werner often said, if we lose the hemlocks, we lose the lake. Frank and Dr. Dana Hall worked closely with Mark Berger's office at Soil and Water to financially subsidize the writing of this grant. Treating the trees is ongoing and will continue into the fall of 2021 and into the spring of 2022. The second example of the importance in having an executive director helping to promote such projects is the recently publicized $100,000 grant obtained by Senator John Mannion from New York State to assist with SLA's pilot plan to treat hotspots of harmful algal blooms in swimming areas, including the Village Public Area, Lourdes Camp, and the Country Club. When Frank, Dr. Neil Murphy, and Dr. Jim Tift, and others on the HABS mitigation team were approached by the senator's office how they might help, this is the project that they promoted. To link into some of the advanced detection techniques already in place and funded by the SLA Legacy Fund, such as the drone and satellite imaging studies done through Ramball Bloom Optics and SUNY-ESF under board member Neil Murphy's direction. With this $100,000 grant, the SLA team is looking forward to working closely with Rich Abbott and others at the City Water Department to implement these pilot mitigations to treat hotspots of HABs as they're detected. The SLA's Lake Ecology Team, or better known as the LET, co-chaired by Dr. Bill Dean and Dr. Buzz Roberts, continues to be instrumental in working closely with community partners, both governmental and non-governmental organizations, in promoting and supporting research and monitoring of the lake and its tributaries, primarily using Legacy Fund resources. An example is the tributary monitoring and lake sediment sampling studies already underway by Dr. Charlie Driscoll in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at SU, and Dr. Chris Schultz in the Department of Geology. Much of this work will help with certification of the 9-element plan by New York State, leading to major public funding in the future, aimed at mitigating areas of nutrient pollution targeted from various lake and watershed models being developed. Essentially, to re-engineer the watershed to accommodate for our rapidly changing climate. But rather than just sit back and wait for the 9-element plan to be finalized, still years away, the LET and the Legacy Fund with Dana Hall and his team have been working hard with Tim Johnson at Anchor QEA, a nationally recognized environmental consulting firm. Sites in the watershed are being identified, evaluated, and prioritized for remediation and restoration. Projects such as Dowling Creek at the Country Club on the west side were completed last winter, and Willow Creek on the east side, which is scheduled to start in a few weeks. Frank will discuss these in more detail in a few minutes. Milfoil Control is in its 15th year of operation under the effective management of John Menapace and his dive team. He reports, by the way, fewer patches than ever were discovered this season. Certainly seems to be movement in the right direction. The Watercraft Stewardship Inspection Program at the major launch sites is in its 10th year under the direction of Buzz Roberts, and it's helping to keep more aquatic invasive species from entering the lake. This continues to be of utmost importance because our experience with milfoil has shown that once an invasive establishes itself into the ecosystem of a water body, it's nearly impossible to eradicate. The presence of zebra quagga mussels since the early 90s is another good example of this. Speaking of mussels, there is growing scientific confirmation from major academic institutions such as Michigan State University that there is a clear causal link between these mussels, the presence of these mussels, and harmful algal blooms. More on this yet to come. The takeaway message, however, is clear. We need to prevent hundreds of other potential invasives from entering, especially the dreaded monster weed hydrilla. Who knows what serious deleterious impacts could arise with any of these other invasives should they establish a foothold in the lake. SLA continues to work closely with the DEC and other organizations to make this project of watershed stewardship even more robust as we move on. Despite all the obstacles of this pandemic year, communication is under Dr. Jim Tiff's direction, with planned educational forums, social media outreach, floating classroom programs, and continuous website updating and revision. We're especially looking forward to the launching of our new research and education boat later this week or next, named after Bob Werner. This should be a tremendous help with not only continuing the valuable and necessary research that is ongoing, but also for many of the educational programs that are being planned by Jim's committee. Finally, 2021 has seen the formation of the SLA Advisory Council under Joe Grasso and Fran Fish's planning and direction. Its inaugural meeting was held in June with valuable advice coming from representatives of the business community, academic and scientific institutions, farming, media, and philanthropy. Now, Joe Grasso, chair of the nominating committee, will take over and introduce the new and renewing board members that need confirmation by all of us at this time. Thank you, Joe.
Great. Thank you, Paul, and good evening, everyone. So as secretary of the Skaneateles Lake Association, it's my duty to conform to the bylaws that we have, where the annual meeting and the membership elect our new members and our continuing members. So first, I'd like to introduce the 3 new people who will be joining our board, and second, list the 7 members who we would like to continue and put into nomination. The first 3 new board members we have, first is Dr. Peter Plumley, who is the Senior Advisor of Exhibits and Grants at the MOST. And he's also a Research Associate Professor at SU's College of Engineering and Computer Science. Peter's been asked to join our board to help with our new education effort being led by Jim Tiff, and also to launch that program as we move forward this year. The second person that we're nominating is Kim Purse, who is the Chief of Staff to the CEO at Vice Media Group. Kim is an expert in social media and marketing, and she'll be working with Fran Fish and other members of the board to help promote the Skaneateles Lake Association. The third person that we're pleased to nominate is David Allen, the Director of Philanthropic Affairs at the Allen Family Foundation. David will be helping us with strategy as well as fundraising. So those are our 3 new board members. There's also 7 continuing board members that we'd like to place in nomination. The SLA has 3 classes of board members, and each year we've elected the first class, the second class, and now we're re-electing the third class. And the people in this group would be Bill Dean, Jed Delmonico, Bob DeWitt, Joe Grasso, Rich Hole, Buzz Roberts, and Paul Teresi. And Frank, with that, I'd like to put these 10 people, new and continuing board members, in front of the membership for nomination and election.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. So at this time, what we'll do is ask on the honor system, we ask that only members of the Skaneateles Lake Association vote at this time as part of our business, and appreciate everyone else's patience while we take care of this. We're going to launch a poll that says, please vote yes or no to approve the addition of the following new board members for initial 3-year term that Joe had mentioned, and to approve renewal of another 3-year term for the following board members that Joe had also mentioned and are listed on the poll that you'll see when we launch it right now. So thank you for taking time, and please vote yes or no on this slate. And we'll give it a few seconds.
Frank, while people are voting, I just want to also thank some members who are leaving our board. First, Jim Tizzolo, for his many years of service on our board. Jim will be joining our advisory council, and we'll benefit from his good advice. Rick Garrett, who's a teacher in the Skaneateles School District, he'll be stepping off the education committee and the board, but will continue to help as needed. Mary Sennett, for her many years of service, providing a focus on government relations. Mike McMahon, who will also be joining our advisory council. We'd like to thank him. And finally, and most importantly, Dr. Bob Werner, who Paul Teresi just mentioned, who did pass away, but dedicated his life to environmental protection. So we want to thank those board members. And with your votes tonight, we will have 23 of our 25 seats filled. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. And it looks like some folks are having a little bit of technical difficulties where it's saying that it didn't take their yes, but I assure you that we have, looks like we've gotten quite a bit, 100% of everyone that voted unanimously to approve all of our board members and the renewal of our board members as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to end the poll at this point, and we will collect those. And for those who weren't able to vote, if you feel you had technical difficulties, feel free to email us a yes vote to the Contact Us tab on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Joe. I believe at this point in our agenda, we also have a little more business where I'll be sharing our Treasury report. Is this showing up?
Yes, Frank, it is.
Great, thanks, Paul. So Rich Hull, our treasurer, sends his best. He had a conflict this evening, so I will be delivering the Treasury report for 2021 for this past year. The first screen is our general operating expenses of $340,929, which consisted of our annual milfoil maintenance program costs at $160,000, which is a very important program that's taking care of milfoil, and we're seeing good reductions according to John Menapace's report recently. And our steward boat inspection program. This is the aquatic invasive species prevention program that you can see is quite an investment annually, but an important investment to help protect our lake. Along with other programs of 2021, the floating classroom, a portion of that in our operating budget, and the Lake Stewardship Manual, which is a portion, and the Lake Friendly Land Care Campaign. But also those are part of the Legacy Fund operating expenses split as portions as well. And these are the principal funded 2021 projects to date, including the completion of the Dowling Creek construction project. We still have revegetation left to do this fall, which I'll talk about a little later. The Willow Creek project, which Paul talked about a bit. Our floating classroom again, the research through Syracuse University and Bloom Optics, and also I believe ESF's satellite assessment is part of that too. The completion of the Russell's Landing project, which had to do with hydro seeding, working with the Soil Water Conservation District, and the initiation of the SLA Hemlock Woolly Delicate Management Program, which Dr. Buzz Roberts is leading with support from Dr. Dana Hall. Our revenue sources outside of our membership and legacy, well, including memberships and legacy fund, this is as of June 30th, 2021, just to note, it's $380,000. Fran Fish will be discussing more about our membership and legacy fund, but wanted to thank Onondaga County through the FLOPA program for the continued support of $25,000 that goes towards our milfoil management program. Many thanks to the Central New York Community Foundation for supporting the Skaneateles Lake Emerging Watershed Scientists Program, which is part of our Floating Classroom Initiative. And thanks to the DEC for helping support some of our AIS prevention program and our ability to be monitoring the DEC launch a bit better. And also there's investment income. Our combined operating and legacy fund assets as of again, June 30th, 2021 is $999,150. This was submitted by Richard D. Hull, our treasurer. And that's the end of the report, and happy to answer questions with our panelists at the end if there's any related to that. And now at this time, I'd love to switch things over to our wonderful membership chair and legacy fund co-chair, Fran Fish. Fran is the super glue and duct tape of our organization. And thank you, Fran, for all your support through the years here. And I'll share the document that you sent us as well, if you're ready to go, unless you want to say a few words before sharing that.
Well, this is the boring part. You had all the exciting stuff to talk about. I'll do the numbers.
Great. Scroll up here. Is that sharing what you want to see there?
That's great.
Wonderful.
Everything that everybody's talked about so far only happens because of our members. So this is how we make it happen. And I just wanted you to get a little picture of how our memberships are going. You can see what we had for total membership in 2019 and 20, and what we had for membership last year up until this point, August 24th. We're a little bit ahead this year, 21 members ahead this year. And I think that the member registration fees and matches, we do have a number of people who get matches for what they pay us in membership fees. And you can see that we're a little bit ahead there too, even though it doesn't show it. The difference is that last year, by this time, we had received that $25,000 from the county, and this year we haven't yet gotten that. But had we gotten that, if you go on to the next page, Frank, you will see that the membership paid to date are slightly above what we were in 2020, and the membership fees paid to date are approximately $12,000 more than they were in 2020, if you take into account that $25,000 that will be coming in from the county. I think another very good positive point is that we have an effective system and team working on outreach to all new lakefront and lake rights owners, and we're really beginning to get some response. Although this is hard work, because getting mailing addresses for new owners can be difficult until the first tax bill comes out. Unfortunately, as these are registered online or with the different counties or municipalities, often the address for the new owner is simply the address of the new place he bought. And in many instances, that's not where they get mail. So we have a certain amount of mail that comes back, but often we're able to chase them down. And I have a wonderful team of young people who have just stepped forward, several of whom just called and said, what can I do to help? And boy, are they great. And I've also got several adults, board members, wives of board members, and several people out in the community who have stepped forward and said, whatever I can do to help, and they do it. So it's great. We are working with a computer programming company to develop an auto renew membership option as part of our online membership registration program. This would allow people to say, look, here's my information that you can take money from this year, and you can take it every year at this same time. We send out a reminder to them it's going to happen a couple of weeks ahead, and we send out a thank you after it happens. And that should take some of the pressure off some of the work of getting memberships renewed. And there are a lot of people apparently who think that this makes life a lot easier for them, and that's great. So we will be working on that. We don't have a proposal yet, but I expect to get one in a week or so. So there are really some non-financial positive membership points I want to make. Our members are increasingly looking to and turning to the SLA for information and answers and guidance. The Contact Us tab is busy with communications back and forth every day, back and forth. And these are dealt with by me or by Frank or by whatever board member I can refer them to who can answer the questions. And we're pleased with this. This is an educational process. It's a communication process. And of course, especially during COVID, when we don't get out there and see as many of you, it keeps us connected with you. We have members that are reaching out to ask if other specific individuals and families are SLA members and giving us names to follow up on. And I think that's a real positive as well. And I think another significant positive is that we've made some requests for a special additional donations, and the response has been positive and generous. And that's happened when we've gone to defined groups and to specific individuals. And this includes asking some people for some extra money for our steward program because it was more expensive last year and this year, and also the money we raised for the Robert Werner Research and Education Boat. And I am really pleased to say that this community has donated over $35,000 for that boat. And I just can't imagine any place else where that would have happened. So thank you to all of those involved. And you'll hear more about that in the paper when we get it launched. Some membership points to ponder. There are about 90 of our 2019 members who did not rejoin in 2020 and have not renewed in 2021, despite multiple mail and email outreach efforts. 51 of the members who joined between January 1st through June 30th, 2020 have not yet renewed in 2021. And sadly, there are approximately 400 owners of lakefront or lake rights properties who have never joined the SLA. You can go on, Frank. Those are big losses and they have a financial impact and more. So what can the SLA do about that? We plan to use our current volunteers and more to seek and confirm mailing addresses for lakefront and lake rights property owners who have never joined the SLA. This is a little bit of a tedious process, but these young people who've jumped in to help us are real good at this, so we're going to keep them working. We will reach out by mail and on social media with a message for all such owners, encouraging memberships and its benefits. For many of these people who've never joined, all we have is one address, might not be the right one, and we don't have emails. So it takes special work to get to these folks. So the next question, of course, is what can you all do to help us? Can move it down, Frank. So this is what I'm asking you today. A little too far, a little too quick, Frank. So I'm asking you, I'm going to put two screens up here, and we're asking you that tomorrow we're going to email these screens to you. We're asking you to print them. And so let's take a look at them. The first one is just a piece of paper that says, this is the Skaneateles Lake Association. Please ask yourself the following. And then it says, do you swim or kayak on the lake? Do you any of these things? Because if it's true that you do, shouldn't you be a member of the Lake Association? This is something you can print and use with a friend, a neighbor, a new owner who comes in next to you, and encourage their membership in the Lake Association. And the other document that we'll be sending you along with this one that you can print, we'll send these out by email tomorrow, is simply a registration form. And I don't know how many of you are signed on tonight, but I think there's about 100 of you or so. And if even half of you would just get one person, that would be 50 more members, and that would help fill some of the places we're missing. So this is what I'm asking you to do. It's work, but it's good work. And over the past couple of months, as I have been out in the community a little bit more with COVID restrictions, a little bit less, and I've met people, I do not find that people get upset if you ask them these questions. I might meet a contractor in the post office and say, oh, you work for such and such company? I've seen your sign all around town. I have a feeling this lake really gives you business, does it? Yes. How about joining? You can do the same kind of thing. You have a neighbor who lives on the waterfront, you go down our membership list online, go to skaneateleslake.org, go to membership support tab, look at the memberships, the people that are listed there. By tomorrow morning, they will be completely up to date. You don't see somebody's name there that should be there, use those two documents that I just put up and that you can print when I email them to you tomorrow, and reach out to these folks using those documents. And share with them the importance of membership, which includes financial support of all of our efforts to keep the lake clear and the water pure, of course. but it also means that they get ongoing announcements of pertinent and urgent issues and educational programs. And it also, very importantly, increases the volume of the SLA's member voice with governmental agencies, municipalities, and other organizations that the SLA turns to for support of issues, programs, or financial support. So encourage these folks to join the SLA. If each of you will join up in this effort, we can make a real difference in the size of our membership.
Thank you so much, Fran. I'm gonna see if I can share and move on to our next portion, which is the sharing our annual report from.
Frank, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
You want me to do
Go ahead.
the legacy fund
Oh
part?
my gosh, I'm so sorry, Fran. Nothing, can't do everything perfectly today.
All right.
All right, let me get you back up. I
Sorry.
apologize. Oh, I hope this is the right one.
There
There's
you
more.
go. All right, there it is.
Is it there?
Yeah, it's there, and it's a little
Okay,
small.
my apologies.
So a lot of the programs that Frank and Paul talked about would not happen without the legacy fund. Those memberships take care of our steward program. They take care of our milfoil program. But a lot of what Frank was talking about and Paul was talking about comes from the legacy fund. So since the inception of the legacy fund, 235 people have not 235 people. We've had 235 donations because many people have donated more than once. Our total legacy fund donations to date are a little over 1,184,000. And the total donations received this year are 137,750. Some positive points. Many of our regular memberships are coming in with small legacy fund donations, and that is really great. We have that line on our membership form to say you can make an additional donation to the legacy fund, and people are doing it. These are not usually big checks, but they're important checks, and we're always happy to get them. And there are multiple members who every year add a little bit extra to their membership, so that's great too. In 2020 and early 2021, our plans for small home parties had to be canceled because of COVID. And we have reached out to one family who previously committed to such, asking if they would be comfortable with beginning again with planning for a first legacy fund raising small home party, suggesting an outdoor party. And if they thought their neighbors would be, who would be the invitees, would be comfortable with such an event. So we're waiting to hear from them. We certainly, as an action plan, need to develop a list of other donors that can be approached either with just a few board members and early fund donors to continue to get some of those larger donations that really got us started. And we have to plan to reach out to our advisory council for assistance in developing a renewed legacy fund donation effort. I think the last thing I have to say to everybody is thank you for all of your support. We couldn't do what we do without members like you. Now you can cut me off, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Fran. Great, so we have just one more portion and then we'll get into Q&A. I don't want to, I'm gonna be very brief, but I just wanted to, I know what's on a lot of people's minds with this past week. And July 12th, we had a 200-year storm event on our lake that just wreaked havoc. And then we had the remnants of Hurricane Fred that I've been around the lake and I've seen the devastation. We've heard the responses from the community, and it has just become clear that the threats going on to our lake, we cannot, are going beyond our ability to try and fix and alleviate that according to the system and policies and resources we have now. We have a wonderful community that cares deeply for this lake. And there's no question about that. And it is just imperative that we as a community join together as best we can, whether through public-private partnerships, through individuals, through everything we can do in our lives to change our lives to protect this lake. It is our lifeblood. And I think when we see these threats surmount, it's just, it's just overwhelming. I'm trying to get my presentation up. You'll have to bear with me. I still have one other thing I've got to, there we go. Thanks for your patience. So just if this is coming up, here's a few snapshots of 5 Mile Point, 10 Mile. Everybody who's been around the lake, whether you're near a stream or the shorelines, if you're in the village, you saw the damage, you've seen what happens. And this is very much the canary in the coal mine related to these harmful algal blooms. This is a rain gauge showing that just went off the charts, and we're starting to see these algal blooms. And you can see these are the samples we've taken, different degrees of turbidity, different degrees of even some areas where green algae is coming off of retention ponds up in the hills that need to be addressed. So just to remind everyone, our mission is promoting the protection of the water quality of Skaneateles Lake and environmentally sound regional management of its watershed. It is all about protection. And so what are we protecting against? These are our 3 main threats. Right now, our ecosystem is just changing every day, and we're doing our best at the boat launches to keep any more new invasives in. We have milfoil, we're managing it, it's working. We have these other invasives where some worse than others. We're finding zebra and quagga mussels having an impact of changing the solubility of nutrients that can further feed our harmful algal blooms. And we are trying our darndest to keep hydrilla out of this lake, because if you think milfoil is bad, hydrilla is logarithmically worse. And it will create a situation where we have to manage it and possibly have to think about chemical management like other lakes with the Army Corps of Engineers. That cannot happen. Climate change. We are seeing warmer water, which for harmful algal blooms, which is microcystis colonies, which produces microcystin. It's a known liver toxin. And this warmer water, when the lake temperatures get to 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, that is when algal blooms are optimal on these windy, when there's no wind, it's quiescent, that sun comes up. We're seeing them pop right now between 8:30, 10:30, 11 a.m. And then when the sun hits from zenith, they go back down. But we're also seeing, and I don't have to tell anybody here that's been around in upstate New York, that we're having more intense rain events. We have 2 200-year, I'm repeating myself, but 2 200-year storms. This lake needs more support, more help, and more lubrication to the system to allow for more watershed improvement projects to happen. And the third threat, poor land and lake management in our community activities. That's why we're talking about having a no wake zone when the water levels are high. We cannot have any more erosion go into the lake to provide more nutrients. We cannot have logging and timber practices clear cut. We cannot have development that clear cuts trees down and then puts a development in and then plants new trees. We need to work our developments around the trees that are existing to keep our roots as part of this watershed. And we are coming out with I'll talk a bit about our lake manual that hopefully will help. And we can't do it alone, which is the other part of the message. All of these threats are related to these algal blooms. We need to do better. How do we do better? How is SLA getting involved? Well, we have to understand the problem better. And that's part of the research. That's part of what Charlie Driscoll's doing. That's part of what Neil Murphy's helping out with. The team at ESF, the Bloom Optics with Ramble helping get up some drones and see what we can understand. With Chris Schultz that's doing the transects and lake sediment studies. The research goes on, the atmospheric deposition research, understanding how our nutrients are coming to the lake and where the worst parts are, how those nutrients are getting mobilized into HABs. And so we also have to do prevention and reducing nutrients by being all there together. A few examples, we are working on a guide to lake-friendly living. There's the Skaneateles Lake Association guide. The content is there. We're working on designs. We've definitely been delayed by some of these storms and certainly the HABs coming in, but we can assure you that this is on its way and we will be doing more outreach about that. The Skaneateles Lake Emerging Watershed Scientist Program. This is what we received $50,000 for from the Central New York Community Foundation to educate our youth and the community more so about the lake and what we can do more. We had a great year, the Lake Friendly Living Coalition of the Finger Lakes. We had 7 Finger Lakes band together to start doing education, where we had a Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week, May 2nd through May 8th. Great program. Working with Jim Tift, we'll get that up on the website. You can go if you just use your favorite search browser and put in Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week, you will find all those videos from that program. And please, we are doing the Take the Lake Friendly Land Care Pledge today, and we will get signs out to you. We know people have been signing up, and we got to get signs to you. I know that. But please, this is a pledge that says you will not use chemicals in your lawn for your lawn and lawn care and your land care. So check that out. It's on our website. And please take the pledge if you haven't already. The Invasive Species Stewardship Program. Again, this is keeping that hydrilla out, trying to reduce the nutrients that can be loading through plants. And also trying to protect in these steep ravines. There's not a lot we can do for stream stabilization in the steeps. And that's generally to the south where we have our hemlock trees. So we are working hard to make sure that program gets up and running so we can see that these steep ravines and these hemlocks are taken care of. And Dana and Buzz are there, and we're looking forward to doing more landowner outreach and working with the Soil Water Conservation District and other partners as well. The watershed improvement projects. This is, Paul touched on this a bit. These are just the 2 completed. We are certainly, we noted Russell's Landing, but these are some demonstration projects. I'll talk about Willow Creek just briefly, but this is the creek. This is the upland areas of Willow Creek, and we're expanding a retention pond to help before it gets into the steep ravines coming into the lake. And this was approved. And thank you to Tim Johnson with Anchor QEA. The Town Planning Board of Skaneateles approved this. The Army Corps of Engineers, EPA, DEC. Many partners were part of this project. Dowling Creek, this is truly our first watershed improvement project that's gotten out of the gate. It's a beautiful demonstration project for what you can do for stream stabilization, which is critical because with the advancements of 1 mile and culvert improvements, along with what we did at Dowling Creek, 1 mile and Dowling, when they come in together, they are very much historically have done a lot of nutrient loading. When I traveled around looking at all the storms going on with Hurricane Fred, I was so amazed to see how well Dowling Creek was during the 200-year event. We need more stabilization projects. And what I did want to show here, if you can see my cursor, this is a step log. There's about 30 of these structures that go around, and you can see a little bit of foam. This is the water just slowing up. And Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong later, but when you see some of the surfactant foam, that could be indicative of maybe some nutrients. But what the good news is, it's hanging out and slowing down. And when we revegetate, we're going to be working with the ESF Restoration Science Center and the Skaneateles Country Club. Also, the Nature Conservancy was a big part of this, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and many others involved. So we're seeing good success. Here's a little bit, it's a little digitized, but a little before and after, where this was flooding out and just was not good. And Paul touched on the Senator Mannion working, and thank you to the city of Syracuse and all the other partners working to make sure this member item related to the $100,000 that you saw the press release for is going to help with some of our advanced monitoring and also some abatement programs. If Neil Murphy's here this evening, I'd certainly, he could talk in more detail about the hydrodynamic cavitation component of the abatement strategy. But also, I need to thank, and I meant to thank also all the stewards that are working hard for our watershed, for the aquatic invasive species prevention. Wonderful stewards under Buzz Roberts and Marty Manette as our head steward. And thank you to our 45 volunteers that we have at 36 active zones around the lake monitoring for the algal blooms. This is part of the DEC's monitoring program through NY-HABs. But I'll tell you, our volunteers that get back to me, when we see one HAB, we put out an email and we find out if anybody else is seeing them. And we try and get that news out to the community, what is best accurate information as we can. So folks have that information to function. And then you will see it upload onto the NY-HABs website, maybe a day and a half or 2 days later. And I know that the DEC is working well at that and trying to improve that. But in the interim, we just want to get as much information out as soon as possible. And that's something that this office does as a service to the community. And it's not perfect, but we're just doing the best we can. And we can't do it alone. We truly appreciate all of our wonderful leadership in government. And this is where we need to really rethink about our policies and systems to allow for catch up of the lakes. As the lake sees more threats, the need is greater. And we really need to look at what's the streamlined improvement approach. I know the 9-element plan, you've heard talk about this plan that is a little ways away, a lot of investment going in. And hopefully that is something that will fast track, but we also need to look at how we can start to look at what our systems are in government and governance around the lake for a more formalized watershed governance to allow everybody to be at the table for further collaboration. And I know when these threats, everybody's seeing these threats get more and more, and we are seeing that as the threats get higher, the willingness for everybody to work together is much better, but we need to pick up the pace. And here's even working wider with a lot of partners, learning from our other friends from other lakes, other institutions, other organizations. Really appreciate everyone being part of the team. And that's all I have. It is 7:50, and we want to make sure we allow time for questions. One last slide. This is a little bit more of what Fran was talking about, and so saying we can't do it alone. We do need the resources. We do need the support. And even if it's not about the dollars, it's about the members that are connected to helping us do the important work to be done. And going to our officials and folks banding together as a local community to go after federal and state dollars. The more members we have and more connected folks we have, the more clout we have to get things done and get more resources from outside the community to come to our lake. And that's all I have. I hope we have a little bit of time. I know we have 10 minutes left in the hour, but we will stick around a little bit more to really get a good panel discussion and start getting into some questions. So at this point, I see a few things in the chat box and in the Q&A, but also thank you everyone who submitted questions in advance. We have been looking at those questions as a team. So we will start with a few of those questions and address those, but then get into some of the live questions as well. Anything from the panelists before we get into questions? Paul, any closing remarks? Anybody, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I want to make a few changes here since we are not necessarily running out of time, but we're running over. In the past, we have collected a lot of questions. This year, we've gotten more than 50 questions addressed to our panel. And by the way, our panel is Paul Teresi, Fran Fish, Joe Grasso, Dana Hall, Buzz Roberts, Jim Tiff, Charlie Driscoll, and Neil Murphy. What I've done, what I've decided to do at the last minute is give the membership a chance before we go through those specific questions to ask their own, sort of open up this meeting real time and get some questions from folks that we'll try to answer. We'll move from that to some of the questions that we've already obtained. But what I will do for those questions that we have not been able to address, we'll put together answers and we'll get them out to the membership. So with that, do we have any questions from the membership?
I mean, as far as live questions, Bill, at this point?
Live questions.
Yes, I've got quite a few. We have a question about, and I'm going to paraphrase some of these. So there's a question about is the county really serious about enforcing the no wake zone? Which to note, that did go into effect today. But folks are, and this person said, we've seen countless boats speeding along the lake and no patrol boats. So hopefully they are on their way out. And then wondering if the village can.
So Paul, do you have any comments on that since you were a major player there?
No, I don't. I don't know what the schedule is as far as patrol boats, but I think they put out an excellent media release. And I think considering everyone who's involved, it involves the county put the release out, but in consultation with not only the DEC, but all the local municipalities within the partnership, city government, Mayor Walsh, Greg Lowe, and others at the county level. So I think they're pretty serious about this. And I think boats that we're seeing now that are obviously ignoring it probably don't even know about it yet, because this just came out at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So I think we'll have to see how it goes over the next couple of days, but I think they're serious about it. And there's no, it's a $250 fine. There's no warnings. And it's anywhere on the lake. And it's anywhere on the lake.
And so our county our county legislator, Julie Abbott-Keenan, is also on this meeting. Thank you, Julie, for attending, and thanks for all your push on this and coordination and work on this. Julie will give you 1 minute. She's asking if she could answer to this, and I think that'd be appropriate coming from the county, since this is part of that. And we know that all the municipal watershed partnership has also agreed and is supporting that enforcement of the no wake zone, and they've come out with a press release with the city of Syracuse as well, calling for the no wake on the lake.
Yes.
So Julie, go ahead. You got a minute.
Unmute yourself, Julie.
Can you hear me now, Fran?
Yes.
Okay, good. So thank you for the opportunity. We have been working tirelessly. I know all of our electeds have. What we are very serious. This is why the county executive and Travis Glazier and myself have been, since last Wednesday when I looked out, I'm staring at the lake right now. I'm watching a giant boat go right in front of my dock, as I have a flood insurance adjuster down there right now, because we are flooded too. I hear you. I had a dock wash in today. We are, the whole point of this executive order was that it actually has teeth. There are things promoting that we can do that don't have teeth, but get out to the media in a good way. As a journalist, it's still good to get the message out. No different than seeing a 30 mile an hour, you're speeding and it says to you, slow down. Good meeting citizens will slow down. That didn't happen at the end of last week. It should have happened. I want protocol so that does happen. In the meantime, when we're going for real teeth through an executive order, it takes time. We have all 3 sheriff's departments, all 3 counties around the lake. We didn't want this to just be Onondaga County, because it isn't just Onondaga County. We get that. I've been in contact with them. I've sent several notes today, and I know others like Travis Glazier and our county executive are working on it as well. I think there is a definite focus on the weekend. I think we need to put information at our boat launches. I would like to see the country club and other public places put out the information as well. I know I've been in touch with a couple of rental groups. And I know, Frank, I'm done after this. When you have tourists coming in and they're pulling kids, and we all know what this is like, they rent for a week. I know my friend who rents at 5 Mile, other vacation spots, they're trying to get the word out. And Paul, you're right. It's a matter of getting the word out. Enforcement is key. There is a real commitment to it. And we're on it.
Great. Thank you, County Legislator Abbott-Keenan. Appreciate your chiming in. And I did see a chat, and thank you to the mayor's office. Greg Lowe's on this evening, and he did indicate and did mention that if you see any folks not adhering to this, to you have feel free to report it to the authorities at this point if you see our lake being threatened by major wakes, major offenders.
So Frank, any other questions coming in?
Yep, you bet. So we have, okay. Sorry, I'm going through. Can you give an update on the use of chemicals to treat HABs by the city of Syracuse? That's in relation to the Earth Tech.
Yeah, Buzz or Charlie or Neil, any of you guys want to weigh in on the copper sulfite issue?
I'm trying to look see if Neil's phone number, if he called in, to see if he's on there to be able to chime in.
I'll let Charlie chime in on that first.
Charlie?
Charlie, Rob.
Okay, I'm here. So Frank,
Yeah.
can you clarify the question for me?
Well, I guess we had like 6 or 7 questions in this area that came in earlier. And I think you can put it one way, we need a brief discussion of why the copper sulfate has been proposed as a way to mitigate HABs and what are the issues.
Okay, yeah, I can address that. So copper sulfate is a chemical. It doesn't degrade in the environment. It's a trace metal. It's a toxic substance. There are drinking water standards and there are aquatic criteria guidelines to try to limit the levels of copper. Copper is applied, it's been applied all over the world to control algal growth. So it's applied manually to the lake and it kills algae. The SLA has a lot of concerns about this. We feel, first of all, it's a approach where you're treating the symptom, not the problem. And as was said in the presentations, we're strongly advocating looking at watershed management approaches to reduce nutrients to go in, which are the root cause of the algae, and that's going to benefit the surface water resource over the long term as a drinking water supply. The algae, there are studies in the literature which suggest that after the application of copper sulfate to combat harmful algal blooms, that action can potentially release toxins directly to the water and create problems. The dead algae will settle to sediments and consume oxygen. So for a variety of reasons, we're concerned about the application of copper sulfate.
Yep, and if I could just chime in real quick too, as well, Charlie and Bill, just to give a little background, this is a application that was sent to the DEC related to Earth Tech, where copper sulfate is 20% of an active ingredient. There are other ingredients that change the nature of how it operates. But before getting into that, it's really the opportunity, what we've asked for from the Skaneateles Lake Association is to, and I know there's others that have advocated strongly for this too, was to have a public information meeting and before any determination was finalized by the DEC. We put out an action alert. We had well over 200 members from the community who supported that action alert, asking for more time and that public information. You can find that on our homepage on our website if you want to read more about our position. But we consider it a success where we have been reassured that the determination, they are extending that. They are not making a determination. There is going to be a public information meeting sometime in September, we were told, and that is where the city, possibly DEC, and also I believe the city reached out to Dr. Greg Boyer, who's a phenomenal harmful algal bloom expert, to provide some data and weigh in on this as well. I don't want to go beyond, I think that public information session is probably the forum to get the most information about this issue and give it the time it deserves as well.
Frank, there is a comment here from Dr. Boyer.
Yep.
to the panel, Greg Boyer. And this is from Greg Boyer, just texting in here. Rich Abbott
Yeah.
reached out to me to do some testing. My understanding is that he plans to wait until the fall until we send results. We'll be looking at the release of toxins, sensitivity of blue-green algae to the chemical and its effects on other algae in the water column. So
Yes.
that's Dr. Boyer.
Thanks, Buzz, and thanks, Dr. Gregory Boyer.
Okay, Frank, next question.
Great. Any of the, Bill, are you going to cover any of the pre-submitted ones too?
I will. It depends on how much time we have, and I can do that now if we have no other questions.
Yeah, well, that would just allow me to run through this too.
Okay.
Make
Okay.
sure we're getting to those.
That works. I organized the questions that came in earlier around our 4 pillars of our strategy that we have for solving some of these lake problems. Lake ecology is one, community outreach, funding, and watershed governance. They all work together. Under lake ecology, we did have a few questions around HABs. Surprisingly, just a few. I have a feeling if we were having this meeting a month later, we'd have a lot more. So here's one question. What happens to the toxins after the algae disappear? Do they disappear or do they disperse into non-harmful half-life levels? What's the half-life? Charlie?
I'm not sure if we really know the half-life, but I think the person who asked the question is correct. A variety of things happen with the toxins. The toxins can persist after the algal bloom is over with. Sometimes you can have an algal bloom and there might not be toxins released. The toxins can be degraded by biological processes, photochemical processes. They can be retained in sediments, and they can mix with other parts of the lakes that didn't receive an algal bloom, and the concentrations can decrease. But they can persist for a considerable period after the bloom.
Yeah, what I'm led to believe is they can persist for days or weeks or sometimes even longer. And there's more than one type of toxin. Okay, we got with the most questions that we had, as you might expect over the last week or so, had to do with copper sulfate. So we have addressed those questions.
Yeah, and there are more coming in, but I think, there's asking about treatment, but I would encourage when we will get the information about that public information meeting, and I think that would be a good forum to continue that discussion with the decision makers and experts at that forum. So I do have another question saying, can we start a program for lake property owners and residents that coaches them how to prepare for lakeshore flooding? I think that's a great question, and maybe that's something SLA can help host. Cornell Cooperative Extension does workshops.
Yep.
That the DEC may be able to support that. Great suggestion, great question. Thank you.
I think Dana may even have more input on that. Any more comments on that, Dana?
Did you say Bill Dana Hall?
Yes, that's Dana Hall.
Oh, I guess no, I couldn't understand Bill. I guess no further comments other than it's a really tough challenge, and along my lakefront, no exception. So I don't really have anything further to contribute right now, but a very good question, like Frank said.
Okay, well, now we're on remediation and mitigation. There are a lot of questions that came in there. Here's one. What's being done to stop farm runoff into the lake? Recent flood event in Randolph Gulf smelled of manure. Dana, would you like to answer that, or I can help?
Let me take a swing at it, Bill, and then you can add as well. So we, the SLA, look at our county soil and water conservation district people as our first line of defense, if you will, our first responders. And so they are aggressive and proactive. They are implementing as much as their resources will permit, best known practices. But always there's not enough people, not enough resources. a known, very helpful technique would be to implement buffers along the downslope of fields and so forth to filter out runoff such as, manure. And our hilly environment is very hard to stop everything totally, but buffers on the downslope would be a big step in forward. Bill?
Yep. Within Soil and Water, that began quite a long time ago under the leadership of Mark Berger. And they really are the vanguard in a lot of the efforts to remediate the streams and what have you in the farm areas of the lake. Another question under remediation. Good question. Can the association, Skaneateles Lake Association, provide any support regarding repair of damage to Lower Bear Swamp Creek, which is flooding, Carpenter's Point? I think one can look overall at all of these flooding issues. What can we provide? Maybe I'll throw that one to you as well, Dana.
Well, yes, Bill, we've touched on, we have been able to collect some money from generous donors all around the lake. So we have a legacy fund. We are trying to apply those dollars very carefully and make sure that we're trying to get maximum bang for the buck. What we can, I guess we'd like to talk further with this party offline, I think, Bill, and see what, if anything further we can do to help down in the Bear Swamp area.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can add to that is they're working with other groups that we can help direct into these areas. And one of them is Anchor QEA, professional engineering organization that we work with a lot. They are our consultants. Any other comments? Jim, Jeff, is there anyone? No. Okay, so lake deterioration and high water. You had a lot of questions.
Oh,
around
good.
that.
I was going to say, yeah, we've got some questions about the lake level. One question about what does the high water mark mean and what's going on, and 7 inches above the high water mark. And I don't know if Dana, if you wanted to mention the message you received from the city of Syracuse about the drawdown.
Yeah, so I reached out on behalf of my own interests, the lakefront owner, as well as my neighbors worrying about shore erosion particularly. Reached out to Rich Abbott yesterday morning. Rich, as you probably know, and I don't know if he's on our meeting tonight, but does an outstanding job for the city of Syracuse and management of the lake levels and so forth. And what Rich reported back, I'll try to be very brief, was that if we get no appreciable, significant, additional rain, and I try not to look too closely at the weather forecast, but if we're so lucky as to have not much more rain, then the city will be able to pull the water down. Rich and folks will be able to pull the water level down on our lake to a much safer level in about 15 days, in about 2 weeks. He also commented in terms of water that they are releasing down the outlet. I think yesterday, Rich said the volume of water was 194 million, a number like that, gallons each day. Think about that, 194 million gallons each day going down the outlet, compared to just a few weeks ago when it was just 6 million gallons per day. So a lot of water is flowing out, and of course constrained by what the downstream rivers and lakes can absorb also.
Okay, let's see. There's a good one here. Oh, okay, under lake deterioration and high water again. Ecologically speaking, does the lake continue to deteriorate year by year, or has it stabilized? Interesting question. I would love, I think, Charlie to weigh in here, and anybody else who might have data that would indicate that we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction.
There's actually a long-term data set through a lot of the city records, but other records that was put together by the DEC a couple of years ago for the 9-element plan, excuse me. And what it showed is over the period of record, which dates back to the 70s, so there's quite a bit of data available on the lake. There's actually been an improvement in water quality, and by that I mean the nutrient concentrations and also the transparency of the lake. However, over the last few years, and by that I mean like 10, 15 years, there has been a slight deterioration showing increases in phosphorus and slight deterioration in transparency and slight increases in turbidity. I wouldn't say the lake water quality is very high. It's very good. It's a water supply there's a filtration avoidance agreement. So the water quality is still very high, but it is slightly deteriorating. And I think that's part of the motivation for some of the remediation programs that we're involved in and advocating.
Yes, you say the phosphorus concentration in the lake, it might be basically is constant, if you will. So we often wonder, well, why do we have the HAB events? You might have a few comments regarding the nutrients that are found in the sediments in the lake.
Yeah, so we with Chris Schultz, we've done a survey of sediment nutrients across the entire lake, and as Bill said, we find elevated concentrations of phosphorus and in the sediments themselves. And the concentrations in pore waters in the sediments are orders of magnitude higher than the concentrations in the water column of the lake. So we think that there's a good possibility that could be the release of these nutrients from sediments could be driving some of the algal activity that we've been seeing.
Okay.
Bill, if I could just add a word.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly in the last 20 to 30 years, and maybe Charlie, you can elaborate a little bit more, we're dealing with two major issues that really were never noted before, and that is invasive species and climate change. And we keep going back to those two things. Invasive species have produced not only milfoil, but mussels, zebra mussels, quagga mussels. And Charlie, you've sent some great papers over, especially the one from Michigan State University, that is showing quite clearly the relationship between mussels, the presence of mussels in an oligotrophic lake, a lake with low nutrients, and the propensity for harmful algal blooms. And we're in a situation where we're dealing with mussels that are lining the bottom of the entire lake just about, and we have no way yet of removing those mussels. So we have to deal with the impact of that particular invasive species on promoting HABs. So that's one thing that wasn't around 20, 30 years ago. And the other, of course, is the warming climate, which is just adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, Charlie.
Yeah, Paul, you're 100% correct. There have been long-term increases, not only in air temperature, but water temperature. And as was indicated in the presentation, that selects for these cyanobacter, which are the blue-green algae that are causing the HABs. And then typically HABs are not manifested in low nutrient lakes, but the conditions of mussels creates an environment in which they can flourish, and it's been observed in several regions that these very low nutrient lakes can experience HABs, and it's certainly those two things, increased water temperature and the presence of mussels.
Thanks. I'm going to jump to a couple more questions here. I know we're running out of time. Here's one. Will the SLA support elimination of lawn chemicals? Interesting question. Who would like to jump in on that one?
I'll start on that one.
Go ahead, Fran. Yeah.
In 2011, New York State passed a lawn fertilizer regulation that prohibits the sale of fertilizers in New York State that contain phosphorus with the exception of starter fertilizer. That same regulation also prohibits that starter fertilizer and non-phosphorus fertilizer have to be separated when sold in the same venue. They cannot be there. And there is also an official sign that's supposed to be posted about that. I have personally examined the Ace Hardware, Lowe's, and Home Depot, and they do follow keeping them separate. I don't always see the sign. But starter fertilizer has a significant amount of phosphorus in it, and it is available. It's expensive. It comes in small bags, but for some of the people who live around the lake, for whom only having a green lawn is a good thing, they are going, or a lawn that's healthy and thick, they're going to buy the starter fertilizer and use it. They can afford to do so, and they do it. It's evident on the lawns that you see. In addition to that, fertilizers do have nitrogen in them. And as you've spoken before, or somebody brought up, there is a relationship between the mussels and nitrogen. So those things still go on. There are very strict regulations about how these commercial companies can apply these fertilizers, both and herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. Do they always follow them? Not from what I see. And I think that that's a real problem. But it's like every other problem we brought up today. There's not enough enforcement of the regulations that exist.
Well, there's also other ways around it, and Frankie might make a comment about the lake pledge that you have.
Yeah, so the question is, would we support the elimination of chemical lawn treatment? And that's part of signing the pledge, that we're asking folks to say that they will not use chemicals on their lawn through the Lake Friendly Land Care pledge. It's part of the Connected to Lake Friendly Living campaign that's going on across the Finger Lakes. And also one of our community partners, the ESF Restoration Science Center, is starting to do demonstrations on lawn to meadow transitions. So one thing is to reduce your need for chemical fertilizers and all that, is to reduce your need of having a lawn, is to start putting in more native plants, perennials that have deeper roots. Even if you went, just did a lawn full of clover is the bare minimum. If you went over to Frank Rossi from Cornell talked about, people will still want turf. If you just had a clover lawn, those roots are better than a lot of the other turf that gets rolled out and all that too. But certainly trees are the best. And then going down into your shrubs, and then if you can do meadows, great. So anything that reduces your lawn size and starts to have a yard that's more appropriate for a watershed is certainly encouraged.
Okay, I got a couple more fun questions. This one's for you, Paul. Can you address what control the village has over the lake level?
You throw the easy one. Of course, the village doesn't control the lake level. So it's the city of Syracuse that controls the lake level.
Right. I just wanted to get that out there. Okay. Why don't we jump to invasive species for a minute? Buzz, you look like you need some work out here. There's a lot of questions around boat washing stations and what's going on there, and how important are they? Are they the main emphasis of us, or is it other programs that we have? So can you say a few words about boat washing stations and your main focus?
Yeah, yeah, sure, Bill. I think, the most important thing is to have a presence of stewards there inspecting and removing any organic material that's coming in on the boats. Now, boat washing stations are great. If you see an excellent use of them up in the Adirondacks and Lake George, if somebody fails inspection, they go on to the boat washing stations. Where we'd love to have one is at our DEC site, but we don't have room for that. So what we're thinking about putting in next year as a temporary measure is a CD3 station, which is a boat washing station without water. It's got a hose on it that is a high pressure air treatment and tools to remove things from the boat, vacuum section for villages that are not cleaned. We still don't know what's going to happen at Scott. They have an excellent opportunity. They have funding for a boat wash station that hasn't been fulfilled. And then at Mandana, we've got a great boat washing station, which works for Mandana, but doesn't work for the DEC. I think in your ideal world, long-term, we'd like to have a central station, like have everyone report to the Lacey Road Mandana station, get inspected by a steward. If they pass, they get a chip and they go to one of the launches and then get launched with the second steward there. If they fail, they get boat washed. But that would take a watershed council to do that. So that's long-term. If we ever get a watershed council formed, that would be ideal. But so right now, we're thinking about one of these CD3 stations at the DEC. Mandana has their station. And then if the boat wash doesn't come to fruition at Scott, maybe a CD3 station there. They're probably not quite as good as the high pressure hot washes that are traditional boat wash, but I think they'll fill the bill. Still, the most important thing, I think, is the presence of steward, getting the boats inspected and educating the public and clean, drained, and dry.
Exactly. And I think those are our two main legs to that strategy until we can get the others moving.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can find one last question. I don't know where this one came from. I put it under generic lake preservation for Paul or Buzz or Dana. Willingness of Syracuse / the DEC to proactively preserve the lake.
Bill, I think I've had my share, so I'll punt that easy question.
I'm not quite sure I have an answer to that other than maybe the avoidance waiver that the city of Syracuse has. In
Sure.
a way that's proactive.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a financial incentive for the city of Syracuse to try and preserve the lake. And that's the filtration avoidance waiver that you mentioned, Bill, because we know that if they lose that waiver, we're talking massive amounts of money. And I mean, the last I heard was $150, $200 million to build filtration plants and maintain
Right.
them. So there's certainly an incentive, not only for the quality of drinking water, but also financial incentives for the city to work very hard at preserving the water quality.
Okay, so
And if I can just chime in, if the DEC has been very supportive in terms of giving us resources with related to looking at sub-watershed assessments, providing their staff around some of our strategies that we're trying to do with watershed improvement projects. They certainly have been very responsive and shown up right to the regional director, Matt Marco, who was helpful in discussions around the boat wakes. They were helpful with when we're trying to get permitting done for some of our watershed improvement projects. I don't know, Dana, if you want to mention anything about that experience, but it's been positive in a lot of areas, and then there's always room for improvement in other areas for all of our partners and everybody around the lake, all of us together, even SLA, looking to do a better job each way we go as we learn more together as a community.
So I propose now that we, unless, I don't think, I think it's getting late, it's almost 8:30. But I propose we do, since we have more than 50 questions that came in earlier, and Frank has been assembling more as they're coming in now, that I and the team, the panel, will try to answer all of those questions, and I'll make sure it gets out to everyone who's at this meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. We have all the questions that came in through the registration, and the reason we used the Q&A this evening was so we could capture those questions. And for anything we can't answer, we will certainly find a home for the question for the best experts and decision makers that are most closely related to that topic too.
Okay.
Paul, any closing comments? I want to thank everybody that's been part of this. We had over 160 registrants and well over 100 participants this evening. We did record this, so we will be sending that out to this meeting out to the community as well. And thanks for all our local officials that attended this evening. I know the town of Skaneateles has another meeting this evening and had conflicts, so otherwise they would be here too.
Wow.
Yep, thank you, Frank, and just thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to get together. It's been a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night. Thanks, everyone.